the beginning of my journey. I was born in Zaporizhia, an industrial city in eastern Ukraine. My father and mother did their best to provide everything my brother and I needed for a happy childhood, but I can't say that we were a very rich family. My father worked and still works as a French teacher at the university, while my mother used to be a kindergarten teacher and now works at a hospital. In 2017, I was hospitalized due to severe anemia. The hemoglobin concentration in my blood was 64 grams per liter, which was very low. Even the doctors were surprised that I hadn't lost consciousness. Initially, medication didn't help, which left me deeply disappointed. I lost hope, and my last hope was to pray to God. After praying and repenting, the medication started to show results. I see this as a sign of God's grace and power. Since then, my faith in God has become stronger. My health improved, and after leaving the hospital, I was incredibly motivated to eliminate unhealthy food from my diet, start exercising, and work on my mental development. I began learning English, reading books, and listening to self-development podcasts instead of music on my way to school. During that time, I felt like I was living my life to the fullest. 2018, I tried to enter a football club in my city but didn't succeed because the level was very high for me at that time. 2019, I posted my first video on Ukrainian YouTube channel related to football. I can say that it was the beginning of my filming journey on YouTube. At that time I was 17 and tried to combine filming on YouTube with studying at school. Until 2020 I studied at school, and in 2020, after successfully passing state examination, I entered the National University Zaporizhia Polytechnic to study for translator/interpreter. I am grateful to God that I was one of the 5 out of 50 students who earned a fully funded place at the university, so my family didn't have to pay for my education. Additionally, I received a monthly scholarship from the government. In March 2021, I joined the football club Dinamo Zaporizhia, and by the summer of 2021, I was close to play for a club in Slovakia. However, Dinamo Zaporizhia could only find opportunities for players who were 18 years old, and at that time I was 19. As a result, some of my friends and I, who were also 19, didn't get the chance to play in Slovakia. But maybe it was even better for me because my health conditions got worse due to overtraining, because I had 2 trainings almost every day and with a total of 12 training sessions and 1 match per week. So it was crazy summer for me in terms of trainings. Beginning from September 2021, I tried to combine a lot of activities simultaneously, like studying at the university, playing football, filming on YouTube, and calisthenics. It was not really smart because I didn't develop myself deeply in several or even one direction, but tried a lot of things at the same time. It didn't bring me positive results because I was jumping from one task to another, and I blamed myself a lot for not achieving success in any of these directions. Due to many activities, I ate late at night, which affected my sleep. I slept for about 7 hours and 30 minutes, which was not enough for me considering the intense physical trainings I had. A lack of sleep caused me poor performance in football, constant sleepiness, and unbearable sugar cravings. All of this continued until 24th of February 2022. 24th of February 2022. Russia started the invasion of Ukraine. In the first few minutes, we couldn't believe it was real. But after a few more minutes, tension began to rise, and panic started to set in.
Що ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1.
When I was writing the script for this video, it was painful to go through all these moments and emotions again in my head. Maybe it's not brave to speak about all of these feelings, but I will, because it is how it truly was. And it is my digital diary where I try to share different stages of my life to make it like a film about my life or like a biography. Also where I show my path, where I built my life from nothing to something great. The first month was really the hardest and mentally unbearable because firstly, the capital of Ukraine was almost surrounded by Russians. Secondly, we needed to adapt to a new reality. For example, how to react to the first sounds of air raid alarm, how to react to the first explosions, whether shops are going to be opened and whether the food will be delivered, because Russians were getting closer and closer to Zaporizhia. Thirdly, we knew that many people were dying, soldiers, but also ordinary citizens. The first month we needed to stay a lot in the shelter under the ground. There were a lot of times when we needed to run to the shelter during the night because the air raid alarm went off and it meant that there was a possible missile attack. We saw like all the residents of the building from young kids to old people were running together to the shelter. Sometimes these air raid alarms were just air raid alarms without any danger. But there were times when these air raid alarms were accompanied by Russian missile attacks. Here we were helping to construct anti-car spikes for the defenders of airport of Zaporizhia. It helped to feel that we were useful to the society and reduced mental pain and depression. In the first days of the war, we were helping to arrange shelter under our block of flats so that every resident had enough place. I was praying to God a lot during that time, but many times my prayers were interrupted by warnings about possible missile attacks. Here I understood the preciousness of having possibility to pray in peaceful environment without interruption and distraction.
Увага! Повітряна тривога. Пройдіть найближче укриття.
Also, we train outside to keep ourselves in good physical shape. Many of us experienced shifts in values and beliefs. Almost everything became meaningless. We started to understand that all people need to have a happy life is peace, good health of the whole family, respect and love to all the people around, your own safety and safety of your family. And even now, in pursuit of wealth or success, I very often forget this thought and become not grateful for what I have, become angry with so stupid things. The end of March 2022. It was 1 month since Russia started full-scale war against Ukraine. Most of the people got used to new reality, and many businesses like shops, restaurants, barber shops began to reopen, and students at schools and universities continued their studies online. But I continued to experience high level of apathy and lack of motivation because of uncertain future and high level of danger. I decided to leave Ukraine. And yes, maybe it's not very courageous decision, but it is easy to judge now, but those days I experienced disgusting mental pain and fear. And I don't say that my situation was the worst, because there were and there are thousands of people who had to and who still have to go through even worse challenges and suffering. I'm not trying to say that my decision is brave, but brave people are those who at the beginning of the war took weapon and decided to defend Ukraine. Those who stopped tanks with their bare hands, those civilians without any weapon who approached Russian soldiers and tried to convince them to stop the invasion. On the way to the Ukrainian-Polish border, I was all the time thinking about my parents and my brother, who stayed in Zaporizhia and didn't go with me. I doubted whether my decision was right. Before I took decision to leave Ukraine, I waited for 3 weeks for the decision of military office of my city, whether they would stamp my documents, because border guard service would not allow me to cross the border without required documents and stamps. These 3 weeks of waiting for the decision of military office were filled with a lot of mental tension and worry. When I returned after 3 weeks for the final answer, the staff told me they had placed one stamp but had forgotten to add the second one. As a result, I had to wait for the head of the military office. Thanks God, he came that day and gave me second stamp. On the bus, I prayed to God a lot. I also met a guy on the bus named George, and this acquaintance would play a crucial role in helping me cross the border. The journey from Zaporizhia to the Ukrainian-Polish border took about 30 hours.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all their shoulders, like moving boulders just to get out of the home.
As the bus approached the border, I began to feel tension, knowing that the moment for document control was near. The border guard service refused to let me cross the border. The border was so close, but the lack of one document made the crossing of the border not possible for me. I had to travel 1,000 kilometers back to Zaporizhia. However, another problem was that the military office in Zaporizhia didn't issue this type of document for an unknown reason.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
So I returned to Zaporizhia and stayed there. I continued studying online at the university, and from time to time I gathered with players from the football club just to play for fun. I decided to quit using Instagram because I used it too much at that time. But at the same day I broke my resolution and impulsively opened Instagram. However, the guy whom I met in the bus on the way to the border appeared somehow in my recommendations. I opened his profile and saw that he had managed to cross the border 2 days before. It motivated me to make a second attempt in crossing the border. I contacted a lawyer who had worked with George, and he explained what I needed to do. He advised me to go to the military office in Lviv to obtain the necessary documents. However, to stay in Lviv, I needed more money. So I went to work on a farm located in a village even closer to the front line than Zaporizhia to earn some money. It was a risky decision because although they paid well, the area was more dangerous. The next week, I took a train to Lviv. On the way, I was constantly praying and listening to the gospel. It was hard to pray with so many passengers around me. In a situation beyond my control, the only option I could find was to rely on God's help. In the following days, while I was busy with the documentation process and dealing with the military office, I stayed in a hostel in Lviv and continued doing the same. I prayed as I waited for the decision of military office. These words from the Bible were very often in my head at that time. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make straight your paths.
Thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's be really real, anxiety can foggy all this stuff. I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's be really real, anxiety can foggy all this this stuff. It sucks when you finally feel like giving up. Oh God, no luck. Everything feels like you're sticky stuck. I'm lost, handcuffed to the bed where I sleep. Don't give a fuck. Can't stop, unplug. Feeling overwhelmed. I think I've had enough. Gotta find a way to get some energy. Gotta find someone who's a good friend of me. I need purpose to make it all worth it. I'm still searching and I'm still learning. I want a life that's filled with memories, not a life with regret in front of me. I need focus to keep me from hopeless psychosis if I keep moping.
When I came to the military office of Lviv, from the first minutes I received a lot of rejections. But thanks God, I didn't quit, and these rejections didn't stop me from trying to explain my situation fully. After 30 minutes, somehow, but they agreed to give a positive decision. It was time to go to the border. I took a bus from Lviv station to Ukrainian-Polish border. The bus waited for a long time at the border. And again, I prayed during this waiting period. Border guards entered the bus and started collecting documents from each passenger. All the men had to explain their reasons for crossing the border. I explained mine and handed over my documents. After examination of the documents, the border guard returned all the documents to the driver, who then distributed them to the passengers. However, there was no clear answer whether I was allowed to cross the border, so we had to keep waiting. Second document check began, this time conducted by the Polish border guard. He asked me if I had arrived at the border on foot, and I mistakenly answered yes. He looked at me with surprise, but I quickly corrected myself and said I had come by bus. When I saw him stamping my passport, I realized I was allowed to cross the border. I stepped onto Polish soil. All I wanted was to take my seat on the bus and express my gratitude to God. After that, I slept for about 2 hours until the driver woke me up at the necessary station. The following week, I stayed in Refuge, Poland, at a refugee center for Ukrainians.
Thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's be really real, anxiety can foggy all this stuff. I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's be really real, anxiety can foggy all this stuff. It sucks when you finally feel like giving up. Oh God, everything feels like you're sticky stuck. I'm lost, handcuffed to the bed where I sleep. Don't give a fuck.
It was time to go to Belgium. The bus passed through Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, and of course, Belgium.
Can't stop, unplug, feeling overwhelmed, I think I've had enough. Gotta find a way to get some energy, gotta find someone who's a good friend of me. I need purpose to make it all worth it, I'm still searching and I'm still learning. I want a life that's filled with memories, not a life with regret in front of me. I need focus to keep me from hopeless psychosis if I keep moping.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's
I arrived at the North Station in Brussels. At the station, I couldn't find any information about a refugee center for Ukrainians, and another problem was that I didn't have an internet connection on my phone. So I began asking pedestrians along my way if they knew anything about the refugee center for Ukrainians. Of course, none of them did, but one pedestrian, Steph, wanted to help. He let me use his phone for 20 minutes so I could access the internet and search for information about the refugee center. He also said that if I don't find a housing for this night by 10 p.m., I could stay at his house. While heading to the refugee center, I ended up in an unfavorable district where it was very dirty, the smell of weed was everywhere, and some shop windows were broken. Brussels really shocked me. When I arrived at the first refugee center, I realized it was the wrong one. However, I saw a police office there, so I thought maybe they could help me. They gave me an address, but when I got there, I found the registration office for Ukrainians, which was closed. I was going from one part of the city to another, but the night was approaching. So I decided to send a message to Steph. We met at the South Station, and he invited me to his house. He shares his house with friends, and they were having a small dinner at that time. I took a shower and he ordered pizza for me and his friends, which was very hospitable of him. I am grateful to God that Steph crossed my path that day, because before that moment I never would have imagined staying in the house of a stranger I had met only once, especially in a foreign country. The next morning Steph shared breakfast with me before heading to work. I spent a lot of time thinking about what decision should I make. I decided to go to the registration office for Ukrainian refugees. As it turned out, there was another one near the South Station. I was registered and a bus took me to a refugee center called Ariane. Positive aspect was that I had a place to sleep, eat and shower. However, the negative aspect was that it was a transit center for refugees, which only covered basic needs like food and shelter. This means that if I stayed there, I don't have permission to work, study at college or university, or engage in other productive activities. To get a work or study permit, refugees need a permanent place of residence, either provided by the government or found on their own. The problem was that the government was struggling to find permanent residents due to Belgium being a small country. Another obstacle was that landlords could only rent to people who already had a work or study contract. But refugees can't obtain a work or study contract because they don't have a permanent residence. So it is a vicious circle. There were people who had been staying in this transit center for 2, 4, and even 8 months without knowing when they would receive a permanent place of residence, allowing them to start working or studying. While being in this uncertainty and waiting for the permanent residence, I met Yevgen. It turned out that he was a believer in God. He invited me to an evangelical home group that one family organized, where we read and discussed the Bible. They also invited me to the church. It was my first time attending a Protestant church, because in Ukraine I read Bible and prayed in the morning, but very rarely I attended Orthodox church. At first, some things in Protestant church seemed new and unusual to me, but it was mostly because I was focused a lot on what other people might think of me. However, when I began to concentrate more on God during the service rather than on what others might think, I started to truly enjoy. From this moment, I started to visit Protestant church more often. After several days of waiting for permanent residence from the government, I realized that continuing to wait was not an option. So, I decided to be proactive and to search for domicile by myself. Firstly, I tried to do it in Brussels by walking on the streets and visiting various city communes, as the Transit Refugee Center is located in Brussels. Here are some of the Brussels' beautiful sights.
For me, but let's be real anxiety can foggy all this stuff. I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's be real anxiety can foggy all this stuff. What you love when it's said and done, cause there's so many differences in each of us. Trust your gut, it can show you what you want.
Secondly, I met one family that wanted to find domicile as fast as possible. They had a car and I could communicate in English. We decided to cooperate to go to different cities of Belgium with hope to find there some kind of permanent residence from the government or to find some kind of a host family. After 2 weeks of intense searching, we had visited a large number of cities and provinces. However, All we end up with was spending a lot of money on fuel for the car and receiving numerous rejections from the communes in different cities, as they didn't have any available housing for us. Once we were almost deceived. A company promised to help us with housing and the documentation process, but in exchange, we had to sign a contract to work on a farm picking apples and pears. Initially, they promised us the minimum wage, an 8-hour workday and housing, so everything seemed perfect. However, as the contract signing approached, we began hearing that the salary would be lower than the legal minimum in Belgium, and that we would have to work 12 hours instead of 8. When we saw the housing, we were shocked. We decided to refuse the contract. After 2 weeks of fruitless searching, this family decided to go to another country to seek for better opportunities. It meant that I didn't have person with car and was not able to do housing search as quickly and mobile as it was before. One day, I made a phone call to the commune of Ghent. From the very first moment, I was greeted by an answering machine speaking Dutch. At that time, I didn't understand a word of Dutch and I wanted to hang up the phone immediately. But something stopped me, urging me to listen to the message all the way through. At the end of the message, I heard an audio signal. Without much hope, I spoke these words in English after the beep. I am a young Ukrainian boy. I am alone in Belgium and looking for housing. I found this number on the website of city Ghent, which said Ukrainians could call here. After leaving this message, I hung up the phone, not expecting anything to come of it. But on this day, a man from Ghent's commune called me back. He put me in touch with Dirk, a man who made a room in his home available for a refugee from Ukraine. I contacted Dirk and met him in Ghent. That was the moment when my life in Ghent began. He picked me up in his car and started showing me everything I needed, like shops, places where I could get free food, public training grounds. Afterward, we had an amazing dinner that Dirk had cooked. I am grateful to God for sending such people on my way, like Steph and of course Dirk. I am also thankful to God that I was able to get the housing within just 3 weeks and didn't have to wait 2 or even 8 months in this transit refugee center. I'm also grateful to Dirk for his enormous hospitality, as he treated me like his own son. He gave me the keys to his house, found me a bike, and gave me some clothes. He also helped me through his relative to find a football club. He allowed me to eat anything I wanted from his kitchen without needing to ask for permission. He took me, his relative, and his daughter to restaurants many times. Everything might seem perfect, like in a Hollywood film. But of course, I miss my mom, my dad, and my brother unbearably. And another thing that causes me and millions of others enormous pain and suffering is the war in Ukraine. Every day, many Ukrainian civilians and soldiers continue to lose their lives. Some of my friends have died in this war. So I want to ask you 2 things. Number 1, pray for Ukraine. Pray for the soldiers who are defending not only Ukraine, but in a way, all of Europe. Number 2, support Ukraine financially. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to send money to me, but rather to find an official organization that helps Ukraine. On the screen you can see one very popular organization supported by many celebrities, including Alexander Sinchenko, Andriy Shevchenko, Barbara Streisand, Richard Branson, and the band Imagine Dragons. They are also ambassadors for this organization. This organization has also been mentioned in the New York Times, The Guardian, Politico, and Wired. Please know that this Instagram account should be verified by Instagram. You can click on the link in the bio of this account to be directed to their website, where you can make a donation and see exactly how this organization is helping Ukraine and in what areas.